Welcome to a short overview on the 24 jieqi solar nodes or solar fortnights. What are the terms jie and qi? Well, according to the Shuowen Jiezi, one of the oldest dictionaries in Chinese history, written around about 100 CE, then jie represents the nodes of bamboo, and actually the Shuowen Jiezi says restrict or moderate or arrange bamboo, so something to do with from one node to the next, or from one quality of qi to the next, restricted by the nodes. And qi, according to the Shuowen Jiezi, is feeding guests with grass and rice. But when we actually look at the character for qi, then we have the grain of rice inside, and then the vapour produced from the cooked grain of rice coming up and out. So jie is a certain amount or a segment. A bamboo tube was used as a standard for the pitches in music, or a measure of capacity, or even of weights. So what are these jieqi? Well, they're solar nodes or solar fortnights. They last for 15 days and they represent a particular quality of qi. So every 15 days there's a change in the climatic energy, in the climate. And there are two different types of jieqi. The odd number are called zhongqi, for instance, the solstices, winter solstice, and the equinoxes, spring equinox, summer solstice, autumn equinox. And the even number jieqi are called jieqi, and these are the ones in between, for instance, the beginnings of the seasons, like spring begins, summer begins, autumn begins, and winter begins. And here are the 24 jieqi arranged by their season, and you'll notice that each one starts with the start of that season. Then there's two jieqi that talk about a particular quality of qi. For instance, in springtime there's rainwater and then awakening of insects. And then after that there's either an equinox or a solstice. Here it's spring equinox. And there's another two that talk about a quality of qi. Here in springtime we have clear and bright, and then grey and rain. And it always follows the same pattern. The first solar node of the season says start of whatever that season is. Then there's two ones in between, and then afterwards there's one that relates to either the equinox or the solstice, and there's another two after that. And here are the characters for the 4 seasons. In the centre it says 4 seasons, ershisi, and then we've got springtime chun, summer xia, autumn qiu, and winter dong. And the equinoxes and solstices represent the peak of that season. So in between the solstice and equinoxes we have the beginnings, the beginning of spring, the beginning of summer, the beginning of autumn, and the beginning of winter. And all together these 4 beginnings of the seasons and the equinox and the solstices are called the 8 nodes, the ba jie. And here you can see I've just listed on the left only the 8 nodes. So we've got winter solstice, and then spring begins, and then spring equinox, and then summer begins, summer solstice, autumn begins, autumn equinox, and winter begins. And here again you can see that you have odd number jieqi for equinoxes and solstices, and even number jieqis for the beginning of each season. So by the Zhou dynasty between the 11th century BCE and the 200 BCE, the 8 solar terms, the ba jie, were used. And it was already 100 BCE by the time the 24 solar nodes, the 24 jieqi, were used. And we can see here that the way the 24 solar nodes, the 24 jieqi are organized, is that there are 6 jieqi in each season. And you can see this in quite a few classics. For instance, their 24 jieqi are listed in the Yueling, the monthly ordinances of the Liji, of the Book of Rites, and also in chapter 5 of the Huainanzi. And they're also listed at the beginning of the first 12 chapters, the Lusha Chunchou, and various other places as well. And this system of jieqi, this calendrical solar node system, was adopted also by Japan, by Korea, and by Vietnam. One jieqi gradually moved through 3 5-day whole. The jieqi were clear markers of temporal change from one node to the next, while the whole were more subtle changes of nature, maybe the movement of a particular type of bird or the opening of a flower or all that kind of stuff. While the jieqi were more strong markers of the interaction between heaven and earth. And the 72 whole, which made up a year, only became part of the official calendar in 520 CE, although they were already listed both in the Yi Zhou Shu, the lost book of Zhou, and even in the Su Wen. So Chibo says 5 days is called a whole, and 3 whole make up a qi, and 6 qi are a season, and 4 seasons are the year. And then it tells you how this is just a continuous progression. The days of the annual cycle end. There is one completed cycle, and then you go back to the beginning. The season begin. Their qi unfolds like a ring without an end. And the whole also continue in the same way, like a ring without an end. And then Su Wen 9 tells you how important it is to know about these kind of things. It says, hence, if we do not know what a year adds to health, how qi can flourish and wane, and why there is repletion and depletion, then you cannot become a proper practitioner. The 24 jieqi are also divided into the 6 steps, liu bu, and these are called the 6 host energies, and they're related to the 6 divisions or the 6 conformations. So there are 4 that relate to wind and shui yin. There are 4 that relates to fire and shao yin. There are 4 that relates to heat and shao yang. There are 4 that relates to damp and tai yin, and there are 4 that relates to dryness and yang ming. And of course the 4 seasons are also represented by the 12 branches and the 12 tidal hexagrams. And in this picture you can see the 4 seasons, the 12 tidal hexagrams, which represent the growth of yang from Ci branch, the midwinter branch, all the way up to Ci branch, the branch just before midsummer solstice. And then at midsummer solstice, yin starts and grows up until it reaches high branch, the last branch before midwinter solstice. So these 12 branches, which are also related to the 12 months and the 12 hexagrams, are divided into 4 parts, 3 for each season. And each branch and each hexagram also relates to 2 of the solar nodes. And you can see here, for instance, that yin branch, which is when the new Chinese New Year starts, is also the beginning of spring solar node. And here is a much older representation of the 12 branches and the 12 hexagrams and the 12 hexagram names and the 24 solar nodes. And the character Jie is also the 60th hexagram of the I Ching. And this is the hexagram here. It has Dui, the lake, or the youngest daughter, below. and kan, or water, the middle sun, above. And it's usually translated as something like limitations or nodes or rhythms. And of course, limitations are what allow the development of our strength and diversity. By honouring our restrictions that we face, we can use them as guidelines or roadmaps so that we are able to transform ourselves. We can use these nodes to make clear communication and agreements so that our relationships will work well. And limitations may look like obstacles to forward progress, but these obstacles are actually an opportunity to change how we view obstacles. And of course, nodes allow the measure of size, pitch, and rhythm so that everything resonates with the vibrations that most harmonize with it. And our life needs rhythm and structure, but that rhythm and structure needs to be flexible like the nodes of bamboo. And keeping these nodes alive and allowing rhythmical beats is what allows us to live our life in the best way possible. So 60, it's not by chance that jie is the 60th hexagram. There are 60 seconds to a minute, there are 60 minutes to an hour, and the stem and branch cycle is a 60-minute, day, hour, month cycle. 60, jie, is a complete cycle from one node to the next node. And when we look at the 6 steps, each step of the 6 steps is 60. 60 is 4 15-day periods, and it's also 4 15-degree angles. 6 steps of 60 degrees make 360. 360 is one full cycle of time and one full circle of space. 60 is where space is time. Those 24 fortnightly periods, 24 solar nodes, make up 360 days, and those 360 days are equivalent or represent the cycle of one full year, from one year to the next, the node of 1 year, and it's also the node or the circle of time and of space, one cycle of space, 360 degrees. So join me in an exploration of space and time. We'll look at how the different nodes follow each other throughout the year in terms of the quality of qi in the macrocosm and the microcosm. We'll look at exercise and diet so that we can tune into these qualities in ourselves and align ourselves with the rhythm and nodes of the cosmos.